Breaking news. Sources confirming to NBC News that 2 American hostages have been released by Hamas. Joining us now, NBC News correspondent Raf Sanchez. What more do we know, Raf?
Well, Chris, this was first announced in a statement by the spokesman of the so-called military wing of Hamas. He said that following mediation by Qatar, Hamas had decided to release 2 American citizens. They say a mother and a daughter. And Hamas says this was for humanitarian reasons. Now, they are saying in this statement that they released these Americans as a sort of rebuke to the statements that President Biden made when he was here in Israel earlier in the week, where he condemned Hamas as a terrorist organization. He condemned the atrocities committed by Hamas on October 7th. Hamas is saying that they are trying to show the American people a different side, and that is why they have made this decision. Now, we should be clear. We do not yet know where these 2 Americans have been released to. One possibility is that they will be released across Gaza's southern border into Egypt. We know that the Rafah crossing has been closed for humanitarian aid, but it is possible that they could be handed over to Egyptian officials there. There is a large American State Department and other agencies' presence in Egypt. They were hoping to deal with the Palestinian Americans trapped inside Gaza, trying to get out. So that is one possibility, that they could be released into Egypt, into American care there. We don't know for sure. We have just got a statement from the Israel Hostages Family Forum. This is a kind of umbrella group representing the roughly 200 families who have a loved one being held inside of Gaza right now. They say that they congratulate the release of the hostages from Hamas captivity, but they go on to say the continued holding of hostages is a war crime. Hundreds of families await the assistance of Arab states after Hamas's actions shocked the entire world. Now, Chris, this was a highly choreographed release by Hamas. At about 7:30 local time, they put out a little update saying that they were about to make an important announcement. And then about 7 minutes later, in both English and in Arabic, they put out this statement that they were releasing these 2 American hostages. This was all done under the name of Abu Obaida. He is the spokesman for the so-called military wing of Hamas. He has been the source of what little we know about the roughly 200 hostages who are being held in Gaza. He was the one who initially floated earlier this week the prospect that Hamas might release foreign nationals, and they have now released these 2 Americans in what appears to be a kind of PR move, an attempt at public diplomacy to try to push back against the forceful statements made by President Biden when he was here in Israel earlier this week. Chris.
Of course, the reality remains, and thank God for the 2 Americans who have been released, but there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 people who continue to be held. And of course, that, I think, ominous statement that the majority of the hostages are alive, meaning that some of the people that they took are no longer alive. What more do we know? What has the IDF had to say about the hostages overall?
So far, nothing official from the IDF about these 2 Americans. I can tell you, Chris, the prospect of hostages being released could be one more complicating factor when it comes to the Israeli calculation about how and when to go into Gaza on the ground. I can tell you that even in the short time since we had this statement from Hamas, we have continued to hear explosions from Israeli airstrikes down in Gaza. Earlier on today, the Israeli military giving us a slightly more granular sense of the hostage situation. They say some 200 people are being held. They say about 10% of them are children under the age of 18. You and I spoke last night about 8-year-old Ohad, who is going to turn 9 on Monday. His family worried about whether or not he has his glasses. He is one of the children being held. But as you said, the really important line in that ominous Hamas statement, that statement from the Israeli military, is that the majority of the hostages are alive. And the reason that matters is Hamas has a long track record of holding the bodies of dead Israelis and then, in a macabre sense, pretending that these people were still alive to raise their value as human bargaining chips. Since 2014, Hamas has been holding the bodies of 2 Israeli soldiers killed during the last major Israeli ground incursion into Gaza. Hamas continues to insist to this day that those 2 soldiers are alive. The Israeli military says they know that these soldiers are in fact dead, but Hamas, in its grim calculations, knows that an alive Israeli is more valuable than a dead one. And so one of the big questions inside Israel was, we know that there are 200 people missing inside Gaza. Are they actually alive? Have they been murdered by Hamas? Were they killed on the way out of the kibbutzim, killed on the journey over the border? The Israeli military is now saying it believes that most of them are alive, which, Chris, as you can imagine, is giving hope to the families of the hostages, but also just adding to this devastating sense of not knowing where their loved ones are, when they will be released, and pleading for information.